Welcome back, Star Wars fans, to
Whoops.
Coruscant Radio Underground
She's still.
here on the
Oh my
Science Fiction Area.
gosh.
I don't know what's happening.
I was so excited. I was like, Bo-Katan and armor. And then they were one's upside down and I took the wrong one. And it's just like, I'm just so excited for these two characters.
Yep.
Yes.
Awesome characters. I'm really happy with the way things have shaken out for those two characters. So
Me too. Gotta have Grogu here,
Yep.
Star.
All right. Well, so we don't have a lot of people in the chat, but we have Scott and Charles, and I'm really glad y'all are here. I don't. Scott just missed us. I think Scott jumped into the chat as we were logging off last week.
Well, I'm glad he's here now.
And we miss Scott, and we miss Charles most of the time because Charles is always busy. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, and he's always trying to wrangle us, on Friday nights at the Red 5 Tavern. I mean, he's a busy guy.
That's funny.
So,
Yep.
I get that.
Well, we're glad to see you, Nicole. It's fun. We're excited to go.
I know. Thank you, you guys. I feel like now we've kind of taken a Mandalorian journey a little bit together this season.
Yep. Very glad you joined us for some of these conversations.
Hold up. No, you're not, Charles. Go to Neverland. Seriously. And you too, Marisha. I saw the guy.
I may just feel old. Okay. I may not be old,
don't
but
look
I'm feeling old this week. How about that?
All right. Well, I finally feel like, I'm not going to just roll over and die at any minute. So that's good.
That's great news.
Yeah. So please excuse me. I will probably continue to cough throughout this episode, but I'll try not to cough directly into the microphone. But we're here to talk about the finale, and I think we will do. I do like at some point after this episode, we'll probably do a big roundtable episode for YouTube and for the audio podcast.
All the things.
So we'll have to figure out when we can get the most people on to do that. So if you're able to come back for that, Nicole, you're welcome to come back for that. So
I would love that.
So we'll have to see who all's interested. But we've seen it. We saw the finale. Did it meet your expectations?
Yes. Mostly. Yes.
I have a little bit of a gripe about the episode. It's mostly the only real gripe. I loved the episode. My only gripe is that as we kind of got into the end, after we got past the big battle, it was like we just kind of breezed from one thing to the next.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish we could have spent a few more minutes in some of those places.
Mm-hmm.
Especially, to kind of see, and I know they're saving it. I know we're going to get this whole big Mandalorian story that we've now, done this thing where people that were unhappy that the Mandalorian was becoming the story of the Mandalorians can take a breath now, because we're fixing to go, if there is a season 4, we're going back to Din and Grogu on an adventure.
Yes. Oh, we'll get there. You just include something though that I noticed today.
Yeah, but I did feel like, as far as seeing what Mandalore is going to look like, I would have liked to. We got a couple of scenes. We got a scene in the mines, and we got a scene at the forge. But I felt like I wanted more. It's not that there was anything wrong with what they gave us. I just wanted a little more.
Yeah, we could have taken a breath there for a second in some of those spots.
Rose and what time are the doctors open in Chicago, Ro?
Later than us. 4 o'clock, and they're like, all right, we're done. Noon on Fridays. If they open on Fridays at all.
Well, Rose in a doctor's waiting room, so I hope everything is okay there. But thanks for jumping into the chat. So overall, let's just jump right into it. We picked up right where we left off. I mean, we weren't sure where we were going. We literally picked up seconds after we left off. What did y'all think about the scene as we come into it? We see, well, really, I guess we open up initially on Bo and the Mandalorians that are still with her, trying to hide, trying to find a way out. But then we immediately cut back to Din, and I feel like they made a mistake only putting 2 guards on Din Djarin again. But
Yeah, it seems like they would learn. You know,
No, they don't know.
they had spent all of his weapons, so he was probably less dangerous.
Yep.
Maybe.
So
now they know better.
I actually, real quick, before we get into this episode, I want to address something we talked about last week because I think my prediction was correct.
I got one right and one wrong.
Okay.
Well, I think the whole thing with the spies. The closer we got through the episode, I kept saying there's not another spy. It's a biblical reference. It's 100%. The more I thought about it, the more convinced I was. And immediately after the episode aired last night, people were on there talking about, I guess that title was just a mistake. They never did tell us who the other spy was. And I've been watching reaction channels, and everybody thinks that everybody's fixing to backstab somebody because they're trying to figure out who the spy is. And yeah, I think that it was a really cool, once I realized what it was a really cool biblical reference that followed right in line with all the other biblical references we had gotten, that the spies were the Mandalorians sent to spy out the promised land before they returned.
I actually shared your theory. I was in Drew Stapp's escape pod on Facebook. It's a group. And somebody had said something wrong. The same time, well, I guess they're not going to finish that. And I had thrown out, hold up. And I'm like, Andrew, science fictionary / course on Radio Underground, he had an idea. I had made sure I included Drew, he's from a certain point Discord group with me. And he's like, oh my God, I love that. He's like, that makes sense. And I'm like, yeah, right. I said, you can think, Andrew. It's science fiction.
When you start seeing, it's interesting how, and I'm kind of glad that they didn't. I'm glad they didn't kind of drag things like that out. I'm kind of glad that it wasn't like, oh, and plot twist, like I feel like maybe the biggest thing that sort of created this culture where we expect everything to have a giant plot twist and it's inevitably a letdown whenever the plot twists aren't twisty enough. Like I feel like WandaVision really upped the ante for what people kind of the expectations every week for what the plot twist was going to be.
Yeah, that's one of them. I think that also, things like with things are really big, like Game of Thrones. Like you're always expecting the backstab or the twist. And it's just, I appreciated that this was just a very straightforward finale. There were no twists and turns. They had set everything up. There's nothing that's not set up, that everything follows a logical conclusion. I'm seeing a lot of, well, they left a lot of loose ends, and I'm really not getting that.
Right. Same.
I think that a lot of what is being perceived as loose ends is things like, oh, well, who was the other spy? Somebody's still a spy. Or things like, oh, well, we thought you led us to believe Din and Bo were going to be a thing. They kind of
did they really?
Right. So now you look at it.
That some people can be friends. Like I don't get that.
And that's the thing. And that's where there was obviously a point in the story where they could have been going that way with it. But it ends up being the story of their representative of all of the Mandalorians, these 2 tribes that haven't been able to coexist, learning to coexist and trust each other. It's not, it doesn't mean, I mean, heck, you can still go down the road and do something and have Din and Bo be a thing, but that's not what the story is here. The story is them learning to trust each other. So let's
Nick,
see.
wasn't it really good?
Ubaldo has joined us in the chat. Thank you for jumping in.
Um,
I want to add real quick into the spy thing though, because
Yeah.
I said this is the one person I did not want as a spy. And I'm so excited because she's not a spy.
Mhm.
I was just like, after hearing you and Marisha talk about her in such a spiritual way, it made me look at her in a new perspective. And I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Because I've always liked the armor. In fact, she was my first Funko Pop. Okay, people.
Okay.
So this is very special.
okay.
I need to
Like I
find that
saw her,
one.
she was brand new coming out of the box. Like I literally said, just put it on the counter. They were taking it out of the box. Like, just put that on the counter because I have to have her. I first one. And I've always I would love to see more about the armor. I would love to hear more about her backstory
Yeah.
and how she fits in because I really don't think we have enough. And I'm dying to know what the horns mean. You know, if it's Darth Maul or if it's just because.
I think for her, I think her armor probably tells a story. I do think
Right.
I do
No.
think
It
that
doesn't tell a story. It tells a song
a song.
of Eon's past.
Yeah, right.
And
And
I
just like
And I
want
and
that song. I want
I
her
think
song.
there's a good chance that she's part of Death Watch, that she was originally part of Death Watch. And
or
um,
her father or mother, it doesn't
right.
even have
Yeah,
to have been
that's
her.
true.
Yeah. But I think that she had been there. She had been to Mandalore. She had seen the Forge. She speaks with some level of authority on Death Watch in the
Mhm,
last episode. That it
mhm.
doesn't exist anymore. It splintered into many warring factions. I think that her or someone in her clan followed Darth Maul.
Very good possibility.
And so I think that the horns are just part of the story. It doesn't necessarily mean that's who she is at this
Right.
point.
But
Um,
And
I was so relieved. So relieved. I was like, "Oh god." I just couldn't. My heart like was like, if they make her an evil person, I'm going to be very sad.
yeah.
Like
Yeah,
that's
no,
what made me cry.
and
So
I like that because we didn't get what we had was her being the voice of reason this whole season as far as uniting the tribes. We
mhm,
see, in fact, we see her shift from the tribes can't coexist. This is the only way to looking at Bo-Katan and saying you're the one that can unite the tribes.
mhm. And this is
And
loved it.
right, so um I'm really happy with what they did with her. I'm really happy we have several characters.
Mhm.
Her and Axe Woves and
Right? Oh my gosh.
yeah, so we're gonna get
Wow.
some big moments that we're gonna
Wow.
discuss with these characters that
Mhm,
could have been could have been the spies or could have backstabbed someone at
mhm.
some point. Koska Reeves gets some awesome shots during the aerial combat stuff.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
so I like that we see these characters sort of taking on leadership roles within the Mandalorian community, and we're seeing people from both tribes stepping in and taking roles.
Right.
And
And they're working together, which is
right,
so important for that group.
right. So we did what I said they were going to do in season one. We've reclaimed Mandalore and we're going to rebuild Mandalore. Like now we have no reason left to believe because last week we were still kind of speculating that this could all fall apart,
Right.
that
yeah,
this could go south real fast and we don't actually retake Mandalore this season.
it's that cycle, because they've been in this cycle for, again, with the Old Testament references, they've been in this cycle over and over where they're like, all right, we're going to do the thing, but then they can't do the thing. They don't follow the rules, and then they break up, and then they all fight, and then it kind of falls into anarchy, and then they're like, all right, let's do the thing, and
Right.
this
Which
like
is
coming
one of the
together and falling
reasons I
apart.
think that we're going to get to this too, but the fact that there is no more dark saber
Oh yeah.
is huge. And that's one of the things I talked about last week. I didn't actually predict they would destroy it because I really didn't think they would, but I said that they needed to.
Mhm.
Because it's a problem. It's a huge problem. It has allowed outsiders with enough power to step in and seize control of Mandalore. It allows anyone with enough power to step in and seize control, which is not I see that as a warrior culture. I see the validity of the strongest wields the power, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not good for for the community, that anyone that's strong enough can step in and take the power.
I kind of with Charles on this. It's not as my favorite weapon, but so this is the one prediction I got right. And that is, I said, I felt that it would be very important that Bo-Katan take on Moff Gideon. She
Yeah.
had to do it. So I was so glad that she jumped in and took over, and she's go save your kid. And I was like, yes, kick his
Right.
butt. Let's go. Like, I was ready. I was like, it's like probably what now, by 2:50 if I started around 2 whatever in the morning. And I'm just like, let's go, like,
Right.
get him. And of course, and then Axis brought down the house with the whole fire thing, which helped finish the job. But
Mhm.
I was so glad it was her. It
Yeah.
had, like,
Well,
as much
she
as I
steps
wanted
in.
Thrawn to come out of the woodwork, that was that was the prediction I got wrong, was I thought we'd get something with Thrawn.
Mhm.
It happens, you never know. That's the part of the beauty and the fun of this, but just to have her like get him, I was just like, no, he may have taken that saber from her, but he did not take away from her dignity or her integrity or her strength or her power that's really inside of her.
Right.
And Bo-Katan has just become this, again, I've said this before, when I watched her in Rebels, I was like, I like her. I didn't love her. And now I'm like, yes, Bo-Katan. I'm like, now she's up there. Like,
right.
she's up there with Leia with me right now. And I'm like, I didn't think that would ever happen.
Well, Bo-Katan, I mean, the thing is, when we met Bo-Katan, she's a villain.
Yes.
And this is, of course, this is one of the things that Filoni excels at, is taking a character and developing them over time.
Oh, wow.
He's very good at taking characters and initially making you not like them very much. I mean, go back and look at the reactions to Ahsoka when she first showed up. Well, now Ahsoka is
bad for
Ahsoka's a top tier character now.
And he actually told Ashley Eckstein, he's like, just so you know, people are going to really hate on this character for a minute, but don't worry, it's going to get better.
Yep.
Right. Yeah.
But what I love about the fight, because you're right, Bo-Katan has to be involved with taking down Moff Gideon, but at the end of the day, it's the two tribes united. It's
right.
It's the three that take him down. It takes all three of them working together to do it. And I think that's a sort of a microcosm of the whole thing, that it's going to take the tribes united. And I kind of think that Mandalore now, if we move forward with the Mandalorian, or even in some of our other stories, we've been using, what's the planet where Din is now?
Navarro.
Navarro. We've been using Navarro as a benchmark to tell the passage of time, where every time we return to Navarro, it's improved. We see development, we see the city growing and things getting better and better. And I think that now we'll begin to see that every time we visit Mandalore, we're going to see improvements and more Mandalorians coming back.
And I think it's going to be interesting to see the decision, if the decisions they make can kind of undo some of the damage that their ancestors did, because basically their ancestors decimated the planet. Like they're they pretty much their civilization existed in domes because the planet was in such bad shape.
Yeah.
But now they're all gone, it's coming back to life. So I think it'll be interesting to see if they can make better decisions in that aspect too going forward.
Right.
I also felt with that moment, with all the beautiful greenery and just that foresty part, that this was also a sign of a new beginning.
Yeah.
Yes.
100%.
Life and like something that's great and what's coming. And I was really excited by that. I was just like, okay, this is cool. Like it makes me feel like it's small potatoes to some people, like, oh, it's farming or it's this. And but it's like, no, this is symbolism. There's symbolism in that it's green and that there's growth. It's not like it was dying, it's growing. And so it had
been laying dormant because of what the Mandalorians had done to their own not
Right.
just their planet, but to their own civilization.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so the planet is a mirror image of their civilization, that as
Mm-hmm.
their civilization crashed into chaos, so their planet did as well.
Right.
And so it's very cool because I mean it's not just, you know, we have the greenery and these creatures that have laid dormant that are coming back, including the mythosaur and um,
Yes. That moment. Okay, we'll get there. We'll get there. I don't know if you guys want to walk through to this because I'm
yeah,
like jumping,
we'll
jumping,
kind of
jumping,
walk through.
jumping.
It's hard not to because there were so many big moments. It's kind of hard not to jump around. But so let's just back up and talk about the kind of the opening fight. We kind of get two parallel fights going on where um, I love the moment. Well, let me say the thing I'm absolutely blown away by the aerial shots in this season.
Oh wow,
That was really
yes.
good.
They got Roe approved. Oh, I mean, that's amazing. That's like an A+ on a test.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Roe
they had some
approved.
they had some really great that shot of the Mandalorians coming down and she's got the dark saber out in the front. It was like, oh, somebody had a really good time with that concept art. Like,
Yeah,
they
and I
really
don't know how they're doing some of these shots. They're doing a lot of like what I would call a GoPro shot, where you're looking back behind the person flying over the shoulder. We did that with some of the ships too. And it's like I don't know if they're using a video game engine to render that stuff or what they're doing, but it's all of the aerial combat stuff looks
Yeah,
absolutely amazing.
kudos to their staff that's doing that because they did a phenomenal job.
Yeah. Um, so real quick, let's talk again about we didn't talk a lot um about Moff Gideon's troopers last week. They're not just troopers. Like he wasn't lying when he said he took the best of the Mandalorian culture and he put it into the weaponry, right? So I mean,
Yeah.
these are the only thing they're missing. It's obvious. It's when we get to hand combat, they keep losing,
Right.
because they're the they're the evolution of the Mandalorian super commandos that became the Imperial super commandos that were still trained by Mandalorians. And now they've got all the nice shiny equipment, but they're not being trained by Mandalorians anymore.
Well, I mean, and that's a perfect example of like you can have all the best stuff, but unless you have, I mean, you've seen this in your field. Andrew's got a photography degree, and he's seen people, who go out and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on equipment that they don't know how to use, and it's like it's only, it'll only ever be so good unless you really know how to use your equipment properly, right? And so I feel like that's what they've got. They've got all of the best accoutrements, but they don't have the discipline and the training to use it effectively. And as long as the fights are, out there, then they can really win. But whenever it becomes an actual matter of skill and not just the coolest gadgets,
right,
all bets are off.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we got the continuation. Like, what did y'all think about I love the shot where Axe Woves flies into the cruiser, and I mean he hits the ground like running to the bridge.
That was unexpected. I was not expecting that. And at first I thought he was about to sacrifice himself, like Paz Vizsla did. And all of a sudden he jumps out and I'm like, oh, okay. But then as you see it going down, oh my, what a beautiful shot. What a beautiful shot. I was just like, that is so cool. I know I'm jumping ahead, Andrew. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Gideon and his clones or anything, and I'm just like, look at that shot. Like,
yeah.
I mean, definitely did think for a second there when he got on there, he's like, get out, everybody, go down to the planet. I was like, oh, he's gonna do the thing. He's gonna be the bad person. He's gonna do the thing. He didn't. So, and I mean, he's kind of become an increasingly likable character as it's gone on. I really didn't want to see him.
Well, it's one of those things. A lot of people were convinced that he was the spy. And a couple of the reaction shows, as he's ordering everyone off the ship, they're like, "Oh no, he's the villain." And it's like, but
it could have gone, and
but we see what we do see. We don't see a lot of acts this season. We see his fight with Bo-Katan, but prior to that, we see him leading the mercenaries.
Right.
And even though they're out there living as mercenaries, we see an honorable person.
Right. He's had some character development, and that's good. For how much time he's been in the show, we can at least see it.
Yeah.
But I think it's also really cool because if I'm correct, that ship was originally Moff Gideon, so that was even better.
Yeah.
I'm like,
bringing out his fair play.
Yeah,
I loved
Moff
that.
Gideon's
I was
ship.
just like, that's awesome.
So I love Grogu showing up and saving Din in the hallway.
I know. I had a feeling. Oh, that's what I got wrong. I thought maybe the new Jedi Order would show up, but that it is what it is. But
Yeah.
I'm glad it was Grogu. It makes sense because now it's the child coming for the son coming for the father.
Well, what do y'all think about that? There were a lot of predictions about the New Republic. I talked last week about the only one that I thought made sense in the story was possibly the New Republic.
Right.
The patrol with Carson Teva. Like I didn't think Luke showing up or Ahsoka showing
I didn't
up
think they would show up.
or Boba Fett showing up. I couldn't make those
Didn't
make
seem right.
sense.
Yeah.
Those, to me, those would have seemed really forced.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I'm glad nobody else showed up.
I know. In hindsight, yes.
Because it's their fight. It's not just a battle. It's a battle for their home. And I think that in the grand scheme of the story, it's important that they took it themselves.
Especially for the kind of culture they are. And they're very Spartan culture. Spartans don't really want the Athenians showing up rescuing them. Like if push comes to shove, they'll take it. But it's not how they're hoping this is going to go down.
Right.
And so I think that I think that there's a bit of just for in the in-universe story of how the characters kind of view life. I think it's important for them that they get to do this themselves, especially going forward. They don't and I think it's also going to be important for their independence from the New Republic, because the New Republic wants all the control, and they do not want to give anyone control of their government. And whenever somebody shows up and saves your bacon, you owe them like that. That gives the New Republic a position to be like, well, clearly you can't even take care of yourselves. We had to show up and save you for you even to be able to get on this planet in the first place. Right.
Yeah.
So I think for the story going forward, and the fact that we don't see anything with Mandalorians in the sequels, I think it is important for them to have their own thing. And I think the New Republic staying out of it, while they would be the most logical people to have shown up, I think for the story going forward, since we know how it ends, I think that this makes the most sense.
Yeah. Well, it's also an interesting way for Dave and John to take a segment of the galaxy and sort of kind of like what Timothy Zahn did with the Chiss Ascendancy, was basically took and carved out his own little corner of the galaxy where he's the primary storyteller. And so I think that keeping it somewhat disconnected from the New Republic is a way to set that aside for him to continue playing in that sandbox where he's not necessarily weighed down by what everybody else is doing.
Right.
I'm sorry, I cut you off though, Nicole.
Well, I was just going to say, though, that I think that was the one thing, though, I was kind of like, well, I got the prediction wrong on that one. So I guess I got two predictions. That's wrong. It's all right. But here's the thing. I kind of and the reasoning I said, though, I thought that they could come was because they did see Moff Gideon's thing.
Right.
They knew that he had gotten out and they had seen the Beskar armor and they had said Mandalorians. And we didn't get to really see any more of that part. You know, when Jin showed up at the end, again, I know I'm skipping ahead. I'm sorry. But it's once he gets there, he walks into that cantina with Grogu by his side, which was adorable.
Yeah.
It was just like, wait a minute. Like, you know that they found that. And he was like, oh, bingo. But it's just like, well, I guess somebody higher up just went, worry about it. You know what I mean? Or whatever. But we didn't get to see that. You know, and it's like, I don't know. It's just like a very loose string that I felt that wasn't fully tied up correctly, but it's okay. Worked out.
I think we do see though that the New Republic is dropping a lot of strings.
Well, I think what we see from the conversation that Den and Carson Teva have later is that, you know, Den tells him, well, I want to, take jobs on a case by case basis from you. And Carson says it'll never get approved. And so maybe Carson Teva did want to go after Moff Gideon and the Mandalorians, but nothing they want to do is getting approved at this point. And I think we'll probably address some of that in the Ahsoka series. But I think that's as good of an explanation for them not showing up. I don't need a better explanation than that. They didn't just decide to go rogue and go after Moff Gideon on their own.
I wouldn't have minded seeing Zeb.
No, Zeb
Oh
wasn't
my
in the
gosh,
bar
that was
when
the
they
other
went
thing.
back either.
I thought for a moment, I'm like, when he walked through there, I was like, oh, are we gonna get Zeb again? And then I was like,
No, it was just Dave.
that's okay. I'm excited that we got to see him the first time.
Yep.
I'm just saying it would have been cool, but
yeah, no, I think that was everybody's reaction when we went back. We thought we were going to see Zeb again, but it was just Dave sitting in the back. It's got to be cool though, like to be in this universe you've helped create. Yeah, just sitting in the background.
Even though apparently he did it kicking and screaming,
right?
In the interview, like the acting, the round table stuff after, he's like, yeah, I was just not going to come to work that day, but it cracked me down. Yeah, no, everybody was like, nope. The costume department's like, nope, it fits. It goes. Everybody's got you ready. They've got a helmet made. They've got all the props, the costumes, the set all around you. You got to be there. But yeah, it's
yep. So
it's fun to get to see him there for a second. I mean, I think though, I wonder if that was as much as anything just kind of a like, oh, by the way, we can make this look really cool.
Yeah.
It was like
a test to see how
exactly. I mean, like you put him in there for what, 30 seconds.
And we all nuts.
So they just basically just gave us a little tease of what's going to be coming, I think. And they nailed it. They did such a great job. It was, as much as I kind of felt like in some ways Jungle Book was a little bit of a waste of time, just because it's like, it was beautiful, but it was like, it's exactly the same thing, right? But it's been such an important.
It gave Favreau a lot of time to play with the technology.
Exactly. I feel like it gave it gave them a chance to really perfect some of that technology, and I think we're going to get to see the benefits from that a lot going forward.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I didn't hate it. It was fine. The kid was cute.
All right, so let's talk about Din and Grogu's portion of the beginning of this story, where let's pick up with, Grogu rescues Din in the hallway.
No.
And we get a cool moment where he's talking to Grogu and saying, I need you to be brave. Like, we have to go do this.
Yeah.
And Of course, we get some more R5. I wasn't even sure R5 was still around for sure, but
No,
Still R5.
I love me some astromech action. Was that the cat?
It's a cat. It's a
I wasn't
cat.
I wasn't
It's
sure
adorable, it's a
R5
cat.
I wasn't sure R5 was still around after he gave away the position of the covert.
Yeah.
Um,
You know, I think it's really interesting because we know that the Mandalorian does not like droids. But you know they say you can tell a lot about
Thanks for stopping in,
oh
Charles.
yeah, good night, Charles. Yeah, have fun getting the Padawan to bed. I'm gonna honestly these days I'm just like, hey, put yourselves to bed. Here's what time you have to wake up. So figure it out. But you know, they say they can tell a lot about Charles.
What do they have to say about Charles?
Well, you know what they say about Charles.
All the things. They say that you can tell a lot about a person by like how they treat animals, right? Like if and I feel like, you know, he's like, hey, good job there, buddy. And I was like, he doesn't like droids, but he's still like being like going out of his way to be nice and be encouraging and be kind. Like he doesn't have to be kind to him as a machine.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that one thing that we do see in Star Wars is the people who treat droids well are generally good people.
Right.
Because even though they're not technically sentient, they kind of have feelings. And so I realized as I'm watching that, it was really interesting because I was like, he doesn't like droids, but he's being nice. And that I think that says something about him because when we first met him, he just went in there and just killed all those people straight up in that first scene.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that we're starting to see really a lot more humanity in him.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're starting to see that hard exterior. Not that he doesn't still, he still straight up takes his kid into a war zone. So clearly, you know, he might not be winning any Father of the Year awards in our society, but he's really not the same person that we met back
Well,
then.
remember that child is now an apprentice.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And the child is technically over 50 years old. So.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still curious. I mean, they hadn't told us if they're doing season 4. I can't imagine that they won't. But they're definitely, like we said before, they're definitely warming us up to the idea of Grogu speaking.
I was waiting for that. I'm like,
well, they even teased it for just a moment during the baptism.
mm-hmm.
During that moment, they kind of lingered for a minute, like he was going to say something, and
yeah. I know eventually we're going to get to that part, but Moff Gideon, the moment with the clones, when his eyes went, and I was like, woo, wasn't expecting that.
Yeah.
Didn't scare the bejeepers out of Grogu and probably every kid watching.
Right.
Yeah, we're fixing to get to that part. So we have the shield barriers that
which I loved because initially I just assumed it was just kind of a throwaway thing. And that last episode, it's like, oh, it looks cool, you know, but we actually used them, so that's nice.
Yeah, Den was able to use them to his advantage. So to only fight 2 at a time, and I feel like they really upped their game. I mean, Den has always been a bit of a tank of a person in fights, but I feel like they upped the game a little bit. I feel like Den has gotten better at the combat as we've gone through, and it was almost, I feel like they were taking a little bit out of the John Wick playbook in that fight, where we're seeing a lot more
with the baby.
Well, we're seeing a lot more precision use of the blasters and knives. Which you have to if the person you're fighting is wearing Beskar. So
right, yeah, that's true.
But I love that whole scene is great. The first two he fights, he managed to get a blaster and a knife, both of which he immediately loses over the edge because there are no handrails of any sort in Star Wars. And I don't know how deep that pit was, but
Deep enough. That mouse droid sure just went.
the mouse droid flying off the edge was pretty funny.
Yeah, that was
The
pretty
mouse
funny.
the mouse droid coming back with reinforcements to
And
fight R5 was
It's like what they just pound on him.
yeah.
Like bumper cars.
That was a fun little moment. I mean, Filoni's always done real fun moments with droids. So that's which he obviously learned from George because George always did fun things with droids.
Mhm.
But yeah, then we move into this. We've known that Moff Gideon was interested in cloning. We knew that he had Pershing around, almost seemingly against his will by the end, and
Yeah.
we get these cloning tanks, and everybody's been wondering, is he part of the cloning for Snoke and the Emperor and all that? And no, he's out to build his own empire. He's 100.
I expected that to go.
Like, but if you take that and then take the conversation he had with the Shadow Council, he's not really interested in bringing the Emperor back or any of those things that are going on. He is 100% building his own empire.
Mm-hmm. But he just didn't have the necessary support and tools. Like, he got rid of Pershing. He got rid of certain peoples that probably would have helped him get through to that. But, well, yeah.
Right.
To his own demise.
But that is just not where I really just thought he was more of a team player than that. Like, we've seen a lot of Imperials who kind of have their own agendas, but like that's next level own agenda.
Yeah.
He's got going there.
Well, I think that's the thing. I think there are still multiple. I think he had his own agenda. I think that probably well, Hux, we know Hux's agenda. He's part of what they're calling Project Necromancer in this, which is gonna end up being the clone of the Emperor because he's the First Order. We know all that. And then you've got Paleon, who is firmly in the camp of Thrawn is coming back, and and he's gonna run things.
Yeah.
So
yes,
they're definitely not all on the same page.
No.
And Alexander's dead, and all the generals are coming for blood.
Yeah, no, that's 100% what is going on right now. Is these are all of the generals that are now out for their slice of the pie.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert: not a healthy long-term.
But we
dynasty.
But we do get this look of there's more than one person out there that figured out how to clone force sensitive individuals.
I think
and they're leaning. I don't know, but the new Jedi Survivor game is leaning into the cloning stuff as well.
Okay.
So I don't know where we're going with that. If they're really going to do heir to the Empire stuff, we may see clones in that as well. Do y'all think all the clones is Gideon really gone? Like, we see Gideon proper die, but I mean, what is the possibility that these were the only clones?
I think that
he acts like they were, but I think it's one of those things that leaves a door open.
Those are his only force sensitive clones, I think.
Okay.
It doesn't mean that there aren't other. I don't know. Like, I kind of hope not, because it starts to feel a little like Stargate. It's like, Ball's dead. Oh, look, there's a new Ball. Oh, he's dead. Now there's 7 more of them. It's like, come on, this is just
right.
Like,
yeah.
Right.
It starts to feel like lazy storytelling after a while.
Right. I'd rather have a new storyline at this point.
Yeah. No, I agree. I'm up for
against Esposito. He did a great job.
Absolutely.
He was amazing.
Well, that's the thing. It's a sort of a shame to lose him as an actor. And I won't rule out. I mean, it could be 5 years from now before they decide to put that character back on the board. But I do think that they left they left a window cracked open. Like, there's always the possibility that Gideon could come back in some form.
Well, and honestly, kind of what I suspect that is at some point, um, the necromancer crew procures Gideon's information because they are also working on building a force sensitive clone. So I think that they, at some point they get that information or they break Pershing or something and just integrate that.
We don't
into
even know
what
if
they're
Pershing's
doing.
alive at this
Right.
point.
At this
Or
point,
at
I
least
think
this
it's
information.
Right.
But I think that eventually while we may have seen the end of Moff Gideon, I don't think we've seen the end of his influence. I think we're going to continue to see the repercussions of what he's been doing. All on his own little lonesome there.
Yeah. Hello, Michelle. Thanks for dropping in. So we moved from the clone tanks. I think the cloning stuff, they're opening up a lot of really interesting doors that do parallel a lot of stuff from the expanded universe. We're now getting a lot of potential for things to happen involving the cloning that are straight out of the expanded universe. And I don't know how much of that we'll see, but we're definitely opening up the possibilities.
Okay, so a couple things though on the clones. First off, why are they all adult? Because all the clones that we've seen, like on Camino, they grew them in pods up until they gestated them in pods, and they had accelerated growth, but they didn't actually like.
So we've seen several different types of cloning.
I guess we saw Snokes in a jar.
The Snokes, we Snokes in a jar was they were all definitely the same and fully grown. So we've seen different types.
Transfer? Are we going to see some kind of consciousness transfer technology? Because that's the only way it works, right?
Yeah, I mean, like we don't know how they're doing that or what's going on with that yet. But yeah, like so we've seen now several different variations on the cloning that have not been fully explained.
Yeah.
But we are seeing cloning of fully matured individuals.
I mean, I think that you kind of have to do the full-grown clones thing, or blowing them all up becomes way more problematic, I think, for the audience. But honestly, I'm thinking about it. It's like, yeah, this is scary and terrible, but like, they're in pods. Like they have unless they have some kind of consciousness transferred from Gideon, it's a little
Well, right. I mean, are they blanks?
Yeah, exactly. Or if they're blanks and he just blows them up, that's dark. I mean, even if they do have the potential to be evil, like
I'm assuming that they're not blanks. I'm assuming that they're all clones of him fully. Cloned of his consciousness at a point.
I mean, one has to assume, right? But it definitely makes the
well, no, it's always like you technically just killed somebody who never did anything wrong.
Yeah, I mean,
like
a little dark.
Yeah, it's
and they did.
Well, that's the thing is the cloning is problematic anyway. Like that's always been something that they've addressed, even going back to the prequel trilogy is kind of addressing that cloning has there are problems. There are moral
consequences.
Moral problems here.
Yeah, creating something whose purpose is to die. It's kind of dark.
Well, right. I mean, it was always in the prequels, it was this comparison of one side has droids that are created to die, and the other side has clones that are created to just be the
fodder.
Well, they're created they're created for the exact same purpose as the droids.
Yeah, except they're people, not machines.
Right, but not everybody sees it that way, and we've been addressing that in the Bad Batch.
Well, which I think is interesting. Which I think is because like you see them all, and you know, like he just blows them up, and you're like, oh, because they all look like Gideon. And you're like, oh, good, the bad guys are gone. But like whenever you kind of think through it, with all the conversations we've been having about clones in the Bad Batch and the Clone Wars and all of that, for a while, it becomes a little more complicated, I think.
Yeah. So we move from there to the fight. We pick up the fight with Gideon. At the same time that's happening, we're seeing the Mandalorian reinforcements are arriving on the planet. One of the coolest shots. It's just one of the coolest shots in Star Wars is Bo-Katan and her soldiers flying, and then the drop ships coming in above them.
Yeah.
Just it looks incredible. Such a cool shot. The entire aerial combat sequence is really cool, but we get this kind of last moment of the Darksaber of Bo-Katan leading the Mandalorians into battle, flying at the front with the Darksaber.
So a question, I'm just very curious on your guys' thoughts with the Darksaber, because again, when he took it away from him, I was like, oh, you and your Mandalorians and take away your trinkets and you're nothing. Yeah, right. Because Bo-Katan is more than that. She is just a kick-ass leader. I love her. She's awesome. And she's grown into a really good leader. But that being said, that's not to say that maybe there could be possible kyber crystals out there to create another saber.
Or even in that one, potentially.
Correct. Right. So that's what I was thinking. I'm like, but is it? You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I'm just very curious if there's any kybers left in that, and we could get a surprise.
The lover of old things in me is like, the old thing, they broke the old thing. No, that belongs in a museum.
So I really like the Darksaber, but I'm also like, I saw it as problematic,
right?
For the purpose of recreating. I feel like that's what you go back to what Din Djarin told Bo-Katan last episode. I'm not following you because you have the sword.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of the thing. It has allowed people like Moff Gideon and Darth Maul to seize control of the Mandalorian people. And I think
but
that
even without swords, can somebody else do that?
Possibly, but not just simply by taking this object.
I mean, women
like by taking this object, you can divide the whole planet.
Yeah. Women lying in ponds handing out swords is only a
strange women lying in ponds.
Is only a reliable, foundation for government for so long before it becomes like, all right, this is getting old.
So
it is 100%.
I liked the idea of the Darksaber, but I also felt like that it was something that had long been part of dividing the people.
Yeah, I kind of would have liked to have seen something a little more mystical happen to it, though. Like, I don't know. Like I said, I feel like it's kind of Excalibur, like throwback.
And we could see it rebuilt, and it might be years from now, and maybe we see an adult Grogu rebuild.
Right, wield it, because it's like I can see Grogu though being a Mandalore / Jedi, like Paz Vizsla. Like I get blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Anyways, I can see it, and I'm just kind of now. I'm just like, man, I want to see that. I really want to see that, and we'll see. We'll see.
Yep. But I love the aerial combat, the use of the Darksaber. I love the armorer flying in that she just fights with the tools of her trade.
Yes, and she's not a traitor. Yes, I'm so excited.
She cleans up with those hammer and tongs.
Yeah,
tongs. Who would have thought tongs were so deadly?
I need to practice if mine's that deadly.
Yeah.
But lots of good combat. I mean, as an action sequence, it's one of the biggest action sequences we've gotten in anything Star Wars television. In fact, it may be the biggest single scene. The only thing that I wanted to see in it that I didn't, when we first see all the drop ships coming down to the planet, they're being escorted by the Fang fighters, the small uh, snub fighters, but
Mhm.
we don't actually ever get to see them in combat.
That would be
And
nice.
I would have liked to have seen them in combat with the TIE interceptors. I thought that would have been a cool addition,
Yeah.
but they didn't do it. And that's fine. But they kind of, it's like you can see them escorting the drop ships in and then they kind of disappear. So it's like, well, okay.
We could have done the thing.
Right.
I am glad though that before they smashed the dark saber, they got that shot, like
Yes.
that the money shot there.
Mhm.
Like really, they really built it up just as much as they could right before they decided to smash it.
Right.
Which I mean, I'm glad they did because we got the moment, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's an important symbol going into that fight.
Mhm.
It's going to be interesting to see if they bring it back in any way, shape, or form.
Mhm.
But I think that it was important that it was there in the retaking of Mandalore. But like I
Yes.
said previously, I saw it as potentially problematic for reestablishing one Mandalore.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
especially kind of with the whole needing there to be one coherent leader, and you know, just taking the sword is pretty easy. So that I think you get much better continuity if
Well-
you kind of do it differently. You know, you get the impression though that
Well, I think we can draw a comparison. We know Dave Filoni. We know he loves Lord of the Rings. He loves Tolkien. So let's draw a comparison and say this is Narsil.
oh, it is Narsil, yeah.
But it's Narsil. It's now broken. It's probably going to be kept more as a holy relic.
Right.
Mhm.
No,
But that doesn't mean that it can't be reforged.
well, yeah, that's
So
I was just saying,
right.
Grogu's going to be
Right. So I mean,
reshots.
maybe that's where he's going. That it might be years from now, but that eventually we will see a time when it needs to be reforged.
Right. You know, though, I it does leave the question because, like, she's referred to as princess, or you know, a few times. So you get the impression that her family has been ruling Mandalore for a long time. Have they been the ones actively wielding the dark saber all this time, or
Well, it was lost for a long time.
Okay, so where did it show back up? Did Maul find it again? I don't remember. Like,
I don't remember the whole story. I'm pretty sure Maul finds it somewhere.
Okay, because I was thinking,
Of course he does.
how did this all of a sudden become a
Well,
thing
Maul
again?
finds it and leaves it on
Oh yeah,
on Dathomir.
But that's Rebels. But where does it show up during Clone Wars?
Well, it was in the. I don't know because I'm still not sure about all of it. I can't remember where they initially find it because it was in the temple. It was in the Jedi temple for a long time.
Okay. Archives probably.
So yes, her family has been ruling Mandalore for a while, but the Darksaber has been off the table. It's been lost.
And honestly, I think that the Darksaber not being in play is what enabled her family to rule as long as they did. Is kind of where that thought process was going. Because like I said, taking a sword in combat is not a hard feat, especially whenever your opponent gets to be old.
Right.
And so in the interest of stability, I think that the Mandalore needs to not necessarily be the most capable warrior at this second necessarily. You know, like trial by combat is not the really, again, also not a particularly
right. And that's the whole thing is I think Bo-Katan earned the right to lead. It's not about the dark. It's not about the Darksaber anymore. That it's not. She's not leading. It's like what she says in last episode. Like all I have is this sword. And it's, that's why I keep going back to what Den told her. It's like I'm not following you because of that sword.
Right.
And we see faith being placed in her by Den, by the armor, by other people, and then we see her earn it by leading the Mandalorians into this battle.
Right.
She doesn't lead from the back. She leads like a warrior. She leads from the front. And
Right.
so I think that now we've moved beyond the dark saber being a symbol of her rule.
Yeah.
Right.
So we get the moment. Of course, I love the fight with we had um the Praetorians that are after Grogu. I love that fight with Grogu's able to do a little bit, just enough to help Den out,
Mm-hmm.
by knocking somebody down or taking weapons away from people. And
Yeah.
um,
It's nice
but
to see him using like things that he's learned from Luke.
yeah,
It's
yeah, and
it's nice. It's
it's
good.
nice to see that he has. It's something we didn't really get a big opportunity to talk about this season because we never had a big moment.
Mm-hmm.
But before, when he would use the Force, it was this instinctual thing, and so it only happened in big moments. But this season, we see him using it more and more consistently,
Mm-hmm.
and that he has control over it. So we
Yeah,
don't get
it's
the
usually
the
smack
big
around it.
moments where he just pulls it out.
Yeah.
But we do at the very end here. But it's that he now is learning to control it, and it's 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 going to be interesting to see how he develops as a Force user, if
Mm-hmm.
he develops as a Force user apart from the Jedi, because he is it's one of the things they talk about with the Force. You have to use it. It's a skill. If you don't use it, you lose your connection. And so it's going to be interesting to see, because he's clearly continuing to use it and being encouraged by
Mm-hmm.
Den to use it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out and what direction they decide to go with that.
Mm-hmm.
But this, like, the fight with the Praetorians is good. It's great. But the big moment is, of course, um, Moff Gideon basically telling Bo-Katan that, surrender the dark saber and I'll give you a warrior's death. And um,
No.
and
I
it's
I was yelling at the screen, no, Bo, don't do it. Just knock him. Just go. Let's go.
well, and it's this moment of her saying out loud what has been happening all along is the Mandalorians are coming together, and it's where the Mandalorians are stronger when they're together. And
Mm-hmm.
then he's left to fight Grogu, Din, and Bo.
Mm-hmm.
And this whole fight scene is fantastic. The shot of the light cruiser crashing into the base is
Yes.
with the
Amazing.
Mandalorians flying out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
Whole shot looks amazing.
And then Grogu. That
Right. The shielding. Well,
shield.
we get these moments of them
Amazing.
all protecting each other in this
Mhm.
fight with Gideon. And yeah, this big moment of this explosion, and how do we do this? How do they survive this? And we get this really beautiful shot of Grogu shielding them from the explosion. It's sort of reminiscent of Kanan's sacrifice to save the Ghost crew.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes.
really cool moment. A really good use of a force power we haven't seen a lot of. That's a big one pulled over from video games and Legends and that stuff. So what did y'all think about that whole scene, the death of Gideon and the end of that fight?
I thought it was fantastic. Again, it was visually, it was beautiful. And then
Yep.
again, when Grogu was doing his thing, he was just in that shot. Oh, that's gonna be so. I can't wait to see the artwork of that. That's gonna be gorgeous
So
and just
beautiful.
powerful. And like that was his moment to
Right.
like really show us that this is what he can do. And I'm excited to see now more. Now I want more. That's the other thing.
Right.
Oh, now I want more because
Right. And now they've kind of left us because we didn't get a scene at the end of this. We get a closing that feels very sort of final.
It does. It feels very end of series.
It does. I don't necessarily think it is as much as I think it's the end of an arc.
Right.
I think it's the end of a big arc, obviously, a 3-season arc.
Right. Which is
But
kind of interesting. We're seeing that because usually in Rebels, right? It was like usually like 3 episodes that were like an arc.
right.
Oh, hold up, because I don't want to forget it. When he went back to Navarro and he goes, "Oh, and when you guys go on your adventures," and I'm like,
Right.
that was straight for the fans.
Yeah,
It
100%.
was
And
straight going, just so you know, this is what we are giving you, because this is what we're trying to tell you, is that, these are not fillers. Basically, these are adventures, and we want you to be a part of
right.
these adventures, and to see and to know that it does come together in the long run.
Yeah, no,
So,
that whole thing where, the trip to Adelphi base and the trip to back to Navarro really do a lot to wrap up this three. We've gone from Den finding this child in a pirate's base
who didn't
to
like droids,
right.
hated them.
Um,
Now he's nice to him.
and we've come all the way around. We built it up. We started off them on adventures. I think we need to back up for a second though, because one of the biggest moments in this series is the outward speaking of something that we knew was already the way he felt about the kid, but the adoption.
Right.
It's and we actually get the most emotion I think we've gotten at any point in the voice of the armor.
Mm-hmm.
That when Den speaks this out loud, she says, "Well, his parents are far away if they're even alive."
Mm-hmm.
And and then Den speaks that he will take the child as his own son, which we already knew he felt that way
Right.
about the kid, but we spent the
Mhm.
first 2 seasons trying to find the kid's home, like getting back to his people.
Mhm.
And so now we get this really cool, just incredibly wholesome moment
Mhm.
in Star Wars of him taking Grogu as his own son
And apprentice.
and an apprentice. And when the armor turns around and says this is the way, it sounds completely different than any other time we've heard her say it. That this got her like
It's important though, because like I have a friend who had a really difficult relationship with her dad her whole life. And when she was like in her 30s, um, her dad told her, he's like, I don't even want to see you anymore. You're not my daughter anymore. Get out of my life. And her stepfather, you know, like came in and was like, I've loved you since the first time I saw you, and you've always been my daughter, and legally adopted her as an adult. And it's important, like the people who are not just willing to take care of you, people who are willing to say, you're mine forever.
Yeah.
That's really important. And I saw some people kind of complaining that there was no like emotional moment. Like, where's that emotional moment we were promised? Like, I feel like anybody who doesn't think that was an emotional moment has never felt abandoned or rejected in life. Because for someone who they don't have to, but someone to like, it's important, like for him to actually say that and not just kind of as a like, yeah, I care for this kid, I take responsibility for him, but to come out and say he's mine, and, he's got my name. That's really important.
Mhm.
And I feel like anybody who thinks that there are no emotional stakes missed that.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and it's another, I mean, it's not, we don't have as an explicit of an example, but it's again, it's still playing in that biblical
Yeah, absolutely.
theme that we've been playing in all season.
Mhm.
And that's a long running, even that's an Old Testament theme, even, which
Mhm.
is where most of this is, like if a
Right.
man dies without a son, then it's his brother's job for his firstborn son to be his dead brother's child, and it's important that there be, fathers and sons are a really important concept, and it's, even more especially, obviously, from a New Testament concept, because that's the thing, right? Is that with Christianity is that we are adopted, and we have all the legal privileges, right, of being sons and daughters by virtue of adoption. So yeah, it's a story that it doesn't get told as often as you would think. um I don't think, I would, just kind of the emotional weight that it has. I feel I'm surprised that story isn't told more, but I'm really glad that they made it official.
Yeah.
Right, because like things being official are also important.
Right.
And there's something else that happened, and I don't know if everyone's like really talked about this. Again, I haven't hardly been on social media today, but it's this moment. Okay, right? So Grogu looks into the water.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
The camera pans down, it goes through. We
Uh-huh.
get another shot of the mythosaur. I was
Yeah.
like, so
Yeah.
I have questions on this, okay? Because do we think that Grogu saw him or like felt
I
that?
think Grogu sensed the presence.
Okay, so okay, so I'm excited here because does that mean he's kind of like Bo-Katan in a way, like future leader?
Well, I don't think from what they showed us, again, knowing Dave and the way Dave tells stories, I don't just think that Grogu sensed the mythosaur. I think that the mythosaur sensed Grogu as well.
I think
And
it's a
so it's
force
possible that
creature.
there's Dave likes to do force connections with creatures. A
Oh,
creature that's been extinct for so long that people don't even
right.
think it was a real thing anymore is a
Well,
real interesting creature to bring back as a potential sort of connection to the
They
force.
call it a mythosaur.
and then we know that we know that Grogu, of course, is very connected with the creatures and animals and
Right.
beasts, and he can calm them. And so to have that, I'm like, there's no way they took that time to go aerial through the water like that, and all of a sudden,
Yeah.
and then to see it come up, I was like, I knew that thing was alive. I knew that thing was alive. Like that was
Yeah.
my other thought. But
Yeah.
then I was just like, wait, and then I was. That's when it made me start going. Like, wait, does this mean this guy right here is he like future leader of Mandalore? Like, and of course it got me excited for the future. It got me excited for like a Mandoverse movie with Dave Filoni,
Right.
And I'm just like, are we gonna? Is it gonna happen? Is this what's?
Mhm.
Is this their? What is it called? Like foreshadowing of
Mhm.
what's coming, and I'm just like, I'm
Yeah.
here for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So they're going to do something with that. I don't know
absolutely.
when.
Right.
It might be years from now before they come back around and do something with that. But they certainly that wasn't Dave doesn't do things, and John Favreau doesn't really waste scenes either. Uh, the fact that they chose that moment to show that the mythosaur and Grogu are at least aware of each other's presence
Oh my
through the force is a huge moment that I can't
yes.
wait to see what they do with it.
I know.
Also,
It's definitely one of my more I had so many favorite moments
yeah,
in this
it was a great
episode,
one though.
but that one was up there because I was just like, like it's the
Yeah.
excitement of seeing that we as the fandom get to see this again. But
Mhm.
then it made again that moment of wait, it wasn't
Yeah.
Bo-Katan, it was
And
Grogu this time.
Yeah.
And just
yeah, and I think that it's significant because they keep talking about the water, oh, the water, the mythical waters, the magic waters, or whatever, mystical waters. That's the word. But it senses him when he walks into the water. I think that the water, I think there is some, and we've like,
Well, we know
like
there's something
this,
special about the water.
there's something special about the waters. I think that this is basically the bastardization of old understanding about the significance of the water. But I think the water has this water specifically is some kind of conduit, because and, I mean, we have that, like Dagobah is this place that's strong with the forest. Like we see lots of places throughout Star
Well, we've
Wars.
also seen, I mean, like I was saying, Dave likes to do things with creatures too. You know, we saw the force sensitive wolves on Lafal
Right.
and things like that. So it's very uh possible that the water is a sort of conduit, but that there's a force connection, that the mythosaur is itself connected to the force.
Yes, I think so. And it's also possible that the waters are like, I mean, it lives in the water, right? It's where it exists. So I think it's possible that if the mythosaur is some kind of force creature, that the water is mystical by virtue of it being there, right? It's almost contaminated it, for lack of a better word, with its midichlorian count or something. I don't know. Ooh, maybe that's it. It's midichlorian dense water.
You never know. That's a never.
Hey, Dave will play in the weird,
Uh-huh.
the weird part of the force lore. So, who knows? But I do think that you're right. I think there's some sort of connection that's going to be important down the road. Whatever Grogu's role in the future of Mandalore is, it certainly involve the mythosaur. And I think that a lot of people have seen the mythosaur as a symbol of rule of Mandalore, but that's never established that way.
Yeah, it kind of like, we kind of get a little bit of that vibe, but
Well,
it could go either way. Maybe.
Well, it's that the ancient Mandalorians rode mythosaurs. But we don't
I could totally see Grogu doing that.
But we don't ever have any indication in the lore that somehow that riding a mythosaur is something that entitles you to rule. It's this thing that the Mandalorians tamed the beast. We've seen other large beasts in this place, and this is just something that's part of their culture is taming these beasts as.
I think it's a symbol of their dominion over Mandalore.
Yes,
that they have even what's the word? The opposite of feral.
Tamed.
They've even tamed. At least enough to ride them, right? You have to tame something at least to some extent to ride it.
Yeah.
And so I think it's kind of a symbol of their. But also,
I think the mythosaur is a symbol of the power of the Mandalorian people and their planet.
I think maybe a symbol of their trying to control their environment, in which we see the outward workings of that being problematic. So maybe they can in the future establish more of a symbiotic relationship with the mythosaurs rather than
which a force user is well suited to do. So yeah, I don't know what the future is, but I have seen. I just wanted to address that though, because I've seen a lot of people claiming that if Grogu were to ride the mythosaur, that it would suddenly somehow make him entitled to the throne of Mandalore.
It's not the dark saber.
But that the dark saber is established as a symbol of rule. The mythosaur itself is not.
It's just a symbol of dominion.
Correct.
Still a cool shot.
Yeah,
no, it's an amazing shot, and I can't wait to see what they do with it.
And I do feel like it has the potential for. I feel like the mythosaur connection does have the potential for like new dynamics. I feel like it could be like riding the mythosaur could be, even if it isn't established in the past. It's like, okay, now this is a symbol of my divine right or my worthiness, right? Given to me by the planet itself, or so I even if that hasn't all, even if that's not established as like the long running tradition, I could definitely see it going that way just because of how the Mandalorians are.
We do get the cool shot, the cool scene of the relighting of the Great Forge, because wherever they're at, that's something we've now seen as a symbol of the Mandalorians. Is where they're at, where they call home, they will establish a forge. So
Yeah.
relighting the forge is a really important.
Big
We're
ritual.
back. We're here. This is now our home again.
Yeah.
Moment. I do get that, Scott. Though I again, like I said at the beginning of the show tonight, I do feel like we breezed through some of this, Delphi base, the relighting of the forge, I felt like the baptism scene was fine. I didn't feel like we moved through that necessarily too quickly, but the
Right.
relighting of the forge and the trip to a Delphi base and even the stuff on Navarro, we breezed through it pretty fast. It was kind of
Mhm.
like episode 1 where we were kind of breezing from place to place real quick. And it
Mhm.
almost seemed too fast. Yeah, I would have liked to have seen some honoring of those, not just Paz, but I mean, presumably we lost other people in the retaking of Mandalore, and so some sort of honoring of those who fell to retake Mandalore
Mhm.
Like
would
the
have
end
been
of Guardians too, and Cold
right
Open and
with
whatnot.
the Ravager
Their
funeral.
mystical funeral, yeah.
Um,
Actually, this was I kind of felt this way a little bit too. We did talk a little bit about kind of some of us thought that Thrawn might show up.
yeah,
And
That
I
was
really
I think all of us, I think everybody here said
that
that we
that
expected
was
a
my
throne.
one thing. I was like, didn't happen. I thought it was gonna happen, but oh
Yeah, I mean,
well.
I said that way back. I don't remember if it was episode 2 or episode 3 I did with Roe,
Mhm.
but on Scarif. But I was like, yeah, no, Thrawn's definitely showing up at the end of
Yeah.
this.
Right.
And I think that it didn't for a reason. I think this is like, I mean, go back, Marvel, we got real used to post credit scenes. But when we got to Endgame,
Mhm.
there's no post credit. We
Yes.
end. We let it end and let it be final. Even though it's not the end of the MCU, we have this place of sort of finality. Um,
Got the hammer.
right. And so
And
in
that
this, I feel like we did the same thing where we kind of let it go. I mean, there's obviously some setup for some future storytelling where we go back to just going on an adventure. We
Mhm.
find out what the journeys are, for a Mandalorian apprentice. Um,
Mhm.
and so I'm excited to see that. And I think we will see that. They hadn't officially announced a season, but I think that now we're going back to, um, going on a little bit more of a weekly adventure style
Mhm.
show, which I think a lot of people really wanted. I think a lot of people were, kind of upset as this turned into a bigger, kind of grander scale story, instead of just the story of Grogu and Din. But I felt like it was a good build up. We got this big moment. They're part of this, hugely important, time period for Mandalore, and now, Grogu's an apprentice. So now you need it gives them a reason to say, well, it's time for Grogu to go on his journeys away from Mandalore now. So so we'll see the journeys and then we'll see a return, and I'm really excited to see what they do with that.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I was thinking about just kind of this episode as a whole. Um, because I think in some ways this season suffered a little bit from post Endgame syndrome. Yeah, I really agree with that.
I
I
see.
kept
I'm good with it being very final
I'm okay
because we
with
know the
it,
characters are coming
but
back.
I really expected for there to be like a hook, like a little but wait moment. I just
Yeah, no,
expected 30
A
seconds,
hook.
you
yeah, no,
know.
I thought there would be something. I'm now that there wasn't, I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
But I really thought there would be
I
a
was like,
hook for the
it's gotta
Ahsoka
be there
show.
somewhere.
Mhm.
That's what I expected was Thrawn. I expected
Mhm.
our hook
Mhm.
for the next show.
Mhm.
Mhm.
But I understand wanting this to feel like we had finished something.
Yeah. But I kind of
Now
feel
maybe
like
they'll finally give them to us on Blu-ray.
right, wouldn't that be nice? Um, in some ways, I feel like this season suffered a little bit from kind of post Endgame syndrome in that the finale of season 2 was like unbelievably huge.
It was.
And I think that it was smart of them to
It
not
was, and then
try
they left us hanging for 2.5 years.
They did. But
Yeah.
I think that it was smart of them to not try and top that. I feel like if they would have been like, and we must up the ante. And I honestly, I feel like that's what a lot of people were expecting for this finale. They were expecting that same kind of experience. And you can't replicate that constantly because then it becomes cheap.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and that's why I said, there were a lot of rumored and predicted cameos in this final fight, and I would have been fine with them showing up, but at the end of the day, I think what we got was better.
Yeah, and I think so. And I think it was good to create a little bit of contrast with Luke Skywalker showing up to save the day at the end of the last season. And and I'm sure that the reason that they decided to give us that little bit of information in the Boba Fett show was because it was so long between shows. They wanted to give us something. But yeah, this would have been a more satisfying way to wait for 2.5 years for a new season rather than the one that they gave us.
Yeah. So what'd y'all think about IG-11 now being the
That's great. I am your marshal. That's Sean Connery.
IG-11, the Marshal of Navarro.
That's great.
I liked his new paint job with the Marshal stripes on the chest plate.
Yeah, I liked it. I think that's going to be...
Well, I mean, at least they finished off that quest from the beginning.
Yes.
Of the first episode of
they
this.
They spent an entire episode on it. Like, they really needed to tie that up. Because that was one thing. It's like...
Well, and that's kind of the thing. Like,
droid parts that we just dropped.
Right. And that's kind of something I wanted to talk about. Like, I've seen a lot of discussion about things being left unanswered and not wrapped up, and I can't think of anything that I don't feel like I got an acceptable answer to. Do y'all have anything that you feel like was really left, or if you're in the chat and you feel like something was left unanswered?
Real quick to Megan's question. No, he is the IG-11 is the Marshal of Navarro.
Navarro is independent.
Yeah.
Yes, independent. Not really, because here's the thing. A lot of times, like biblical, like real life, sometimes we have to wait for that answer. And we have to wait. And so I think like Dave Filoni keeps giving us the answer, and John too. Just it might take a different season.
Right. But so I just feel like they answered a lot of the questions. Right. I think the problem is that people didn't get the answer they wanted, and so they feel like it was left unanswered.
Right.
Like, you got the answer, it just wasn't your favorite answer. Which, I mean, it's understandable that people are, not thrilled that they get, because that, in life, that's what we want. We want what we want, right? We want the answers we want, and we want them. Mm-hmm. But no, I feel like there weren't like any big questions left. I think most of the things that people, they did leave some questions like, what's the deal? They spent an entire episode on Pershing. I really thought whenever they showed us that in the recap, I was like, all right, I guess they're going to do something with that.
I think the main thing with Pershing is Gideon had what he wanted from him. Mm-hmm. And they had no intention of letting anybody else have it.
Yeah.
Right.
But it just, it was a little bit of a, kind of like the putting the droid together episode. It's like, we spent a whole episode on it.
Right.
And they just kind of, it didn't really play into the story for this season. Not to say that it won't, but it was only 8 episodes. So I could see that some people could feel like, why did we spend an entire episode on this point that didn't really come into play?
Yeah.
And they did kind of tie up the IG-11 thing. I mean, but like, again, we spent a whole episode on it, like, and tied it up in like 3 seconds.
I think that they largely, they wanted to let us know what happened to Pershing, because Pershing knows a lot. I think as much as that, I think they really were doing some work to establish Elia Kane and
Mhm.
what exactly she's up to.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because I think, in fact, I'm pretty sure she's in the Ahsoka trailer, right?
Mm, I don't know.
I have
I
to go
do
back from.
feel like so here's the thing about kind of the interconnected universe. I feel like sometimes the interconnectivity happens to the detriment of the series that is playing, right? Like I feel like the Pershing thing is going to come into play later, but I don't really feel like it was super relevant to this story. And I think that that is a potential pitfall of trying to tell all these stories in a way that connect is like sometimes the story that you're telling right now starts to feel a little disjointed because you're spending, you know, numerous episodes, or at least, I mean, they spent 2 entire episodes on Grogu and the Boba Fett show, which like was great if you're doing all the interconnected things, but it's not my favorite feature of the way they're kind of telling stories right now.
Yeah.
I understand why they're doing it, and I'm going to watch it all anyway, so it doesn't make that much difference to me. But I could see that that could be a little bit of a problem going forward.
Right. Well, I think that those 2 episodes, particularly the Coruscant episode, are to this series, to this season of this show, what the Mandalorian episodes were to Book of Boba Fett.
Yep. That's exactly
Where they're taking time in one series to set things up for something else.
right.
And yeah, no, I would prefer to have 8. If I'm only getting 8 episodes, I would prefer to have 8 episodes that were more focused on my main characters.
Yeah.
But I understand that they're moving forward with trying to lay a lot of groundwork leading up to Dave's movie.
Yeah, I think so.
So,
But I tend to kind of, I tend to kind of be on board with Megan here. Like, I would rather see a stinger at the end of the season, um, or even the end of a different episode than short episodes. And it's like, okay, well, and that'll, you know,
yeah, I feel like they did that Coruscant episode because they had to establish just how ineffectual the New Republic is.
yeah,
Mhm.
And could you have done that?
more efficiently.
Could you have done it more efficiently in an episode where he's talking to Carson Teva and we just get it through exposition? You could have, but then people would have been upset that they did it through exposition. So,
Yeah.
because people, you know, it's you're never going to please everybody. So,
This is very true.
Sure, you can't please all the people all the time, right?
but so anything else? We've been at this for a while. So anything else
Yeah.
before we wrap up for the night? Chat's been quiet. If you have any questions or thoughts in the chat, please share them.
It'll be interesting to see where we go from here.
Absolutely.
Again, it'll either be another series, another show, another season, or we'll have a movie. I just feel like that's a couple of years out, and it's like I think we have time. I think we have time for at least one more season.
I think we need to have a season of. I think we will get another season of The Mandalorian that will, because right now we're not connected to. This show is not really connected now to the Ahsoka stuff
Yet.
So
we might see how that connects in Ahsoka, though.
We could get Din and Grogu in the Ahsoka series,
or Bo-Katan,
or we could spend some time on Mandalore. I think Mandalore is going to be. I think Mandalore potentially is it plays a major role in fighting Thrawn.
Mm-hmm. That's very good possibility.
Ooh. Okay,
it's also possible that this was 3 episodes called 3 seasons called The Mandalorian, and that the next season could go by a different name. Yeah, absolutely.
And that's Din Grogu.
Din Grogu, that's right. So we now, I'm absolutely fine with wrapping this arc, and this arc is The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
and that next season is something else.
I mean,
I think
and they
that's
kind of established a precedent for that with, the first season was Falcon and the Winter Soldier, right? The next thing will be something else. It's like the same
yeah.
story, different title, right? So I now the way I thought they were going, I thought that it was going to be the Mandalorians, plural, was going
Yeah.
to be the next iteration.
Well,
But
and we're going to I don't know what the future of the Mandalore story is, but we brought it around to this point, and at some point we're going to delve deeper into Mandalore. I think Mandalore is a really interesting place to tell some stories just with Mandalore, with some kingdom building and that kind of stuff. So
we'll definitely get some backstabbing in there once that gets rolling.
yeah. So
Backstabbing that everybody was sad they didn't get.
so when they do that and how they do that, is it a live action series? Is it a Dave Filoni animated series? I don't know, but I do think eventually we go back to Mandalore and delve deeper into that.
Yes.
But yeah, I think that's highly possible, Megan, that they
A
could
little bit of a rebrand.
that they could rename the series moving into a fourth
The
season.
Mandalorian and the Giant.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's possible. And I know there's a lot of people still say that, oh, they're never going to release these on physical media. And I just don't think that's true. I think eventually, but I think that they want to wrap series
they
before
will.
they release things.
I hope they
The
will.
thing is, there's a ton of money to be made in it, and they know that. Eventually, I don't know what the metrics are. I don't know how far out you have to be from a series being new to where it's no longer really responsible for subscribers anymore. I would think that's a relatively short window, like 6 months to a year. That 6 months from now, The Mandalorian isn't what's selling subscriptions to Disney Plus anymore. So now we can also go put it in this other place. And Star Wars fans are collectors.
Yeah.
You announce an HD, a 4K physical media copy of the first 3
We're
seasons
gonna
of The
be there.
Mandalorian, I'm pre-ordering it.
Yeah.
Like, and so I know there's a lot of people saying, "Oh, they're never going to do that," but all the other streaming services do it
Yeah.
because
Stranger
there's
Things.
money. Right? I
Everyone.
mean, Netflix releases theirs like
Yeah.
3 to 4 months after drop. They
Mhm.
release theirs fairly quick because they know there's money there.
Well,
Yep.
they're
And
pretty good at knowing where the money is.
like a really cool 3-season box set of The Mandalorian, like I'm all
Mhm.
over that, and a whole lot of other people are
'Cause
too.
they've been doing the art of Star Wars, The Mandalorian. Those are gorgeous, and I'll be keeping an eye out now. Now
Yeah.
I'm waiting. I'll be watching Phil. I'm trying to remember his last name. He's actually one of the main guys on this, and I love them. They're beautiful books, and I'm
Mhm.
just like,
That Phil Tippett.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the
And
art,
special
they
note.
I love that they show so much of the art at the end of the episodes.
Yes. Oh, me too. Again, I was up in the early AMs. I just happened to wake up and I went, okay, I'm awake. I'm gonna watch this. And then of course I jumped on Twitter. Somebody actually, because I thought about the artist who writes this book, Phil, I'm just SW something. Anyways, he had done a tweet about everyone come in and whatever. Somebody in Australia, they released this in the theaters.
Wow.
I'm like, and he's like, oh yeah, they should bring that to California. And I'm like, they should bring it to the States, not just California. I want it in Illinois. I'm just like, but that makes me wonder, are they testing the waters to see how it would go somewhere else?
Yeah.
Well, that's
To
what they did
bring
with
it
Rings
back
of
to the
Power.
theaters. And I'm just like, let's go.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I mean,
we're
Rings of
ready.
Power dropped their first 2 or 3 in
You
theaters.
couldn't get tickets for that stuff.
No.
Like, we tried because we were in Atlanta. We were actually in a place at the theater that week, and there was
Well,
no tickets.
Star Wars is one of those properties. Like, we're coming up on that anniversary re-release for
Sure.
Return of the Jedi.
Jedi.
whatever. I don't know if that's like a 1 day or a 2 day or how many days they've done, but it will lead the box office that day. However many days it's in the box office, it doesn't matter what's up against it. It will lead the box office. Return to the King was out last week. Despite having Mario and a couple other things that are making good money in the theater, Return of the King led the box office for the day that it was out. And I think it was out again yesterday or today, and I guarantee it led the box office again. Because there are properties that can do that, and Star Wars is one of them. Put these things in the theater, people will go see them. Put the finales in the theater, or put the first episode of a season in the theater. It's you don't have to do a massive scale release. You can do limited theaters, but it's going to make money.
Yeah, but again, I think that they did that on purpose. I think they were testing the waters. How does this crowd react to this? Man, could you guys have seen that ship, the cruiser going down on a big screen?
Well, that's the thing, is we know this stuff is shot in incredibly high resolution. Yeah, give us a chance to see some of it on the big screen.
Gosh, Australia got lucky, or whatever area they chose in Australia. I'm like,
Yeah. And you don't even have to do it if you don't want to take away from your streaming service. Wait 6 months and put it on the big screen. We'll still go see it.
Yeah.
I would definitely go watch that season 2 finale in the theater in the New York Minute. I mean, absolutely. So it'll be interesting to see if they ever decide. I mean, it's Disney. If they decide they can make money, they're going to do it, right? That's kind of
that. At the end of the day, it's about making money. And so that's why I do think that eventually we will get physical media releases of all of this stuff. I mean, why would you not? But like I said, eventually, a year-old show doesn't sell subscriptions.
Right.
So eventually you turn around and go, okay, now what's the next viable revenue stream for this property? And it's physical media or theater releases. So yeah. But did y'all have any more thoughts on the finale before we wrap up for the night?
I don't think so.
No, I'm just excited for what's to come.
Yeah, no, we got to wait. I guess we've got about a 4-month wait for Ahsoka. But I really enjoyed, I liked the season, but the last 2 episodes are just absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah. They're wonderful.
All right. Well, before we wrap up, Nicole, tell everybody where they can find you.
So I am Nicole. You can find me at Peace Love Fandoms on, I had to stop to think about that, for Twitter as well as Instagram and TikTok. I am 1/3 of Used and Abused on Tuesday nights, and we are again part of the Red 5 network with Coruscant Radio Underground and Science Fictionary, as well as 1/2 of Peace Love Disney on Facebook.
Awesome.
What about you?
You can find me occasionally on Twitter. I'm P Padawans on Twitter, and even more occasionally these days on Instagram. I am princesses_and_Padawans.
Awesome. Nicole, are y'all doing the is the tavern open this weekend?
No, the tavern is actually on a spring break. So I think it's for 2 weeks. The tavern is closed, kind of getting some revamping, getting things going, and we'll see. Well, it should be back hopefully, I think May 5th. But I'm not 100%. As of right now, it is on spring break. So for storytelling and all that fun stuff. So
cool. Well, if y'all are dropping on May 5th, then I'll have to catch up with y'all after we go see Guardians of the Galaxy.
I know that's also out that weekend.
Yeah,
it comes out May 4th. I'm like, this is like a Star Wars thing. What the heck? Like, it's what are you doing to us? Like, making us choose. It's ridiculous.
All right. So you can find me running the Twitter account for this show at crew_podcast at CRU_podcast. Coruscant Radio Underground is part of the Science Fictionary channel. So you can find Coruscant Radio Underground and the Science Fictionary podcast anywhere that you listen to podcasts. You can also find us as well as all of the rest of the Red 5 podcast network at bio.link/Red5. You can also drop us a line at the sciencefictionary@gmail.com. So thank you to everybody that hung out with us in the chat tonight. DB, Scott, Megan, Charles was here for a bit.
Michelle.
Ro was here for a bit. Michelle dropped in for a second. So thank y'all all for hanging out. It makes it so much more fun to do this when we have y'all hanging out in the chat. So if you're still watching, in about 8 minutes, I believe, the Sarlacc Digest guys will be going live.
Yep.
So go check them out. They always do a good show. So I guess that's it.
Yeah.
So until next time, guys, may the force be with you.
This podcast is a member of the Red 5 Network. For more Red 5 Network podcasts and content creators, visit bio.link/Red5.